how about, is everybody happy with that? Yeah. If not, hide your face. This is so that we obviously can spread whatever's discussed at the meeting can be used afterwards by all of you in any way you wish. That we don't, also it means we don't have to make extensive minutes, because don't we all see enough of minutes of meetings, and this isn't a formal meeting. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for giving some of your time. My name is Glenn Burrows. I think I know most people. I would normally take time to go around and all introduce ourselves, but I think we won't do that tonight, if that's okay with, unless anyone's desperate to introduce themselves. But what we are is a gathering of people from across Somerset who obviously come from different parts of, Sedgemoor, who have an interest in buses, are interested in how the bus service improvement plan works out, how Somerset spends the paltry amount of money that they've been allocated by the government, and how we make sure that they stick to the line which we want them to stick to, which is to fully implement the bus service improvement plan. Are there any apologies before we start? No?
I think Mick Lerry would have been here, but he's, I think he's somewhere
he's on holiday. He's on holiday, isn't he? Yes, I think he's on holiday. I remember that now. Yes, okay, thanks. So Mick Lerry would certainly want to be here, but no other apologies? Okay then, so what I'd like to start off by doing then is ask Peter Travis, who's sort of the, can I say the brains behind the operation, Peter? Certainly I'm not. But just to bring us up to date with the Somerset Bus Partnership and also the developments of the bus service improvement plan. So just a quick update, please, Peter. Thank you.
Okay. Can you all see that on the screen now? The map of Sedgemoor.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So a brief recap. Who is Somerset Bus Partnership? Well, we came into being largely because of the Bus Back Better proposition, because it seemed that buses were going to be transformed into something which many of us had campaigned for many years. There seemed to be a real opportunity. It was important that bus users had a point of view and it was listened to. And so the Bus Partnership works with parish councils and town councils across Somerset. We have representatives, local representatives from across Somerset. We've got a Facebook page, a website. We talk quite a lot to the media, and we're represented on the bus users and stakeholders group, that's Somerset group, which they had to set up following their BSIP. What we also do, and it's very, very important that we do it, is we encourage and support bus user groups being set up across Somerset, and most notably Bridgewater now has a bus user group, and that's very welcome news, and we would like to see more bus user groups. The one in Frome, which was where I come from, has been going for 5 or 6 years now. We've just had one formed in Yeovil as a result of the bus cuts, which Glenn will talk about later on, but we'd like to encourage other bus user groups across the county, and we're working with our local reps to try and do something about that. So Bus Back Better was the reason for it all, promise of 3 billion, which in the end got reduced down to 1.1 billion, which was to transform buses outside of London. And nowhere was that more necessary than in Somerset, because our bus numbers had fallen by some 43% over the past decade pre-COVID. We have the worst rated bus services in England and the second lowest bus journeys per head. Also, half of all carbon emissions in Somerset come from transport. So we argued that there wasn't a county in the country which was more in need of help to upgrade its currently not fit for purpose buses. And so when the Somerset County Council came up with its bus service improvement plan, which was their application for money from the government, it was a huge amount of money they asked for, 163 million, but that's because Somerset needed that amount of money. Sadly, we didn't get 163 million, we got 11.9 million, which means that we can only do 7% of what we had seen put forward in the bus service improvement plan. Still a useful sum of money, but nothing like the amount of money that we needed. And we recognize that bus operators are facing a double, triple, quadruple whammy at the moment. Bus numbers are only back to something like 70% of pre-COVID levels. Particularly senior citizens are proving very slow to return to buses. We're seeing different usage patterns because people are working more from home, particularly in the cities and the towns. That's affecting things. Bus operators, large and small, are facing real difficulty finding drivers, and added to all of that, they've got soaring fuel costs and staff costs, but particularly fuel costs. So it's important that as bus campaigners, we recognise the difficulties which are being faced by the operators themselves and try and work with the operators, recognising those difficulties. When the election came up in May for Somerset County Council, all the political parties had a manifesto. So we thought we would put out a manifesto, and we can send you copies. I think most of you have had copies of that manifesto. But probably for Somerset, the most significant thing was that we said that the unitary authority needs to provide increased financial support for bus services, because when you look at bus services across the southwest, that blue pillar is Somerset's expenditure on buses, supporting buses, subsidising buses, and you can see it's some 40% below the average of other rural authorities in the southwest. And we said the solution to Somerset's buses, to some extent, is in its own hands by particularly providing more and better supported services, as well as asking for money from the government. And we need to keep on asking for more money from the government. But it was said during the campaign that one of the big benefits of the unitary is that there would be another £18.5 million freed up from the current budgets across Somerset, which could be directed in different directions from what it had been previously. And one of those key directions should be bus services. And I think that is a view which is shared by all the political parties to varying degrees. The election came along and we saw a change of control in Somerset. But from our manifesto's point of view, nearly 2/3 of all the newly elected members had specifically endorsed our Somerset Bus Manifesto, which include the increased amount of spending on buses. And in the Lib Dem manifesto, because we're going to hold them to this, they said that they needed to fundamentally overhaul public transport based primarily on our bus network, and will be looking to make major improvements. So that's a quick background to where we are in the middle of June, nearly the end of June. Unfortunately, we have just seen a range of bus cuts which were in motion pre the election and then have been implemented post the election. And I'm going to hand over to Glenn to talk about that, about the focus on Taunton in the BSIP, and then I will come back and talk some more about ways of getting more people to go on buses. So back to you, Glenn. Thank you. Are you with us, Glenn? Richard, can you hear us?
Sorry, I lost the picture myself for a moment. Sorry, does anyone have any comments, any questions about any of that? Roy, I see you've put in a comment about the number 14. I have recorded that, and obviously that will be part of our summary of people's responses. But it is important that people in the particular localities, I mean, the bus company have called them changes. They are sometimes changes, but I think we call them cuts mostly. And we obviously need to respond to those. But we'll come to that in a minute. So anything nobody wants to comment on anything that Peter has said. Peter, can I share my screen? Can you share with me?
I'm just checking to see if I can do that.
Has everybody seen the summary of the bus changes and cuts for Bridgewater? Everybody know what we're talking about?
No.
Okay, I'm just trying to get it up on the, if Peter can.
See.
No good?
Oh.
Sorry, I can't help. I mean, basically, what we're saying is that, you know, there was no consultation, obviously, with people. I mean, one of the reasons, the main reason we set up the bus partnership was that we had little faith that if we didn't put our spoke in, that there wasn't going to be a great deal of consultation. And these cuts sort of came, yes, the bus company had to consult with the county council, but there wasn't any consultation with the impact on local people. So I think it's not going to be possible, is it? So really, I mean, I think what we need is if people haven't seen these, then we can send them out, but we need people in the localities that are affected to do what Roy has done, which is to provide us with actual feedback. So when we sort of report back to the county council, at the stakeholders group and at the bus advisory board, that we can actually raise these issues. So that's quite important. Does anyone have any feedback on any particular services that in their locality that have been? Roy.
But if I can add to what I've put in the chat note, some of the comments on Cannington Now Facebook page about the cuts for 14 were that people who had relied on the bus to get to work in Bridgewater were now having to, they had to miss an hour's work in the morning and an hour's work in the afternoon because of the cuts to the service. And you know, if you haven't got any alternative transport, that's pretty much what you're, I mean, the first bus is at, I think it's 7:15, and the last bus out is at 4:15. So if you've got people who are required to be in work by 7, that doesn't help. It just doesn't help them. And if people are required to work till 5, unless they can use the college bus, they're similarly hamstrung. And the college bus, of course, only operates on college days. So that was bad news.
Just in case anyone's not aware.
Sorry, Jane, I'll come at you. Jason?
Yeah, sorry. Just in case anyone's not aware, Roy, the 5:10 off of the bus station, which isn't any use to anyone, is open to all and will run Monday to Saturday in college holidays as well.
Thanks, Jason. Jane?
I'm still getting used to using Zoom. I've unmuted myself. That's right, isn't it? Can you hear?
Yes, that's right. We can hear you clearly. Yes, thank you.
So, God, the 126 Western Wales, which serves Axbridge and Cheddar, a few weeks ago, was on the news, the ITV news in the morning, that it was going to be cut altogether. And that stirred things up a bit. And then it turned out that ITV had got the wrong end of things and it wasn't going to be cut altogether. But it is really shocking that you cannot get a bus from Weston to Cheddar Gorge on a Sunday. There are no buses that go from Weston to Wells, and that is the only bus that drops people off at Cheddar. And you can't, so we have nothing on a Sunday. And I just thought, well, that was bad enough. And then it looked like things are going to get worse. And I think there were only 5 buses on a Saturday. So,
you know, I think these are examples of the kind of things we've got to list in our kind of representation. So, you know, don't think anything's too kind of unimportant, because we really need to get from users and people in localities of some idea of the impact and the changes. Because if no one comments, then they get away with it. I've got
people were up in arms about that. That did cause a flurry in Axbridge, actually, when they thought they were going to lose the 126 bus. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Spirited.
Thanks, Jane. Leslie?
Just along the similar lines, I 3 times I've tried to get the 126 in the past month, and on one occasion it turned up. The other 2, first one, it was diverted because of a proposed road closure that never happened in Cheddar, and so it was diverted to the Hayes and then on to Wells, and the second time it just didn't turn up and we abandoned the journey. So it's not reliable, and that's my and Sundays is the other thing, because it'd be quite nice to get the bus and then walk back to Cheddar, but there's no service on a Sunday with the 126.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I think first, and then Carla.
Thank you. Yes, we've been having a little community bus. I think Sedgemoor has organised it. Bob Filmer was very active to do this, and it's a small bus which runs through our village. We don't have any buses running through Cross, but this little bus comes through twice a week, on a Tuesday and a Friday, 3 times a day, and the numbers are growing that are catching it. And for me, it seems I've started using it instead of a car. It's something that I feel I would like to see grow, a little inter-village community bus, which is funded by Sedgemoor. And I think we've got up until September before they'll decide what they're going to do to it. But it's so appreciated, this number 48, little number 48 bus running is from Burnham to Cheddar. And we actually managed to get it to change its route because it wasn't going near the buses, but we asked, and they've changed the route so it actually drops people off quite near the supermarket, and it'll pick you up again near the supermarket. So it felt like a little step in the right direction.
And I think the important thing there, particularly if there's going to be consideration of funding, is that in your locality and the people who use it, make sure that your Sedgemoor district councillors know that that's happening. Now, I say not all councillors use buses, so it'd be a good idea to tell them.
I advertised it on the Facebook, our Cross Connections, and some more people started using it. So that's very worthwhile to advertise it like that.
You're done. Great. Carla?
Yes, thank you. I'll just endorse what Elizabeth has said, because the number 48 goes through East Brent. We don't have any other bus service apart from that. And also Brent Knoll is in a similar situation. It goes between Burnham and Cheddar, and it's on our local website, East Brent Parish Council website, which covers East Brent, Edgingworth and Rooksbridge. And also I've taken hard copy of the timetable, and it's on the Village Hall notice board. And also we have a Friday Hub Cafe now, and I've been actively promoting that. In a recent planning application by Strongbox to develop 35 homes at Hill Lane in East Brent, they claim that there are bus services, and when you drill down on the planning application, it quotes Bridgewater College term time coach service. There's one in the morning at about, I think it's about 7:30, and then it returns from Bridgewater College at about 4:50 and returns to East Brent. Now, I just wondered, hearing your previous conversation about being able to use college buses in connection with the Cannington Bridgewater number 14, are adults able to use a college bus, but only if it's only running in term time, so that's no good if you want to work. But
No.
This was quoted as an actual physical bus service that the developer had quoted, and it was only when I drilled down and was actually able to tell our parish clerk that I felt that we couldn't use it, but I wasn't 100% certain.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah, I think, sorry, is that Roy?
No, it's Jason.
Okay, Jason quickly,
yeah.
and then Roy, because I know
Yeah.
Roy's got some views on
Just
this
to
as well.
come back to you on that one, I currently work for First. That's not why I'm here. But the Rooksbridge bus that runs in the morning and back in the afternoon is open to all. It's in the public timetable.
And that runs every day?
Monday to Friday, term time.
Term
So-
time only.
Be good to
So Bridge-
advertise that, wouldn't it? Is there any way that we can?
You can,
Advertised.
I mean, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the Bridgewater College term this weekend.
Yeah.
So that service will cease until September, but it's definitely something to push from September onwards.
Yes, that's great. Roy, sorry.
Thank
Well,
you.
just to say that unless the college service is actually listed as being a public service, they won't take you, because I've stood at the bus stop in Cannington trying to get on a college bus, but they just say, no, we're just running students. There are one or two that are to Cannington and beyond, and from beyond to Cannington and into Bridgewater that are part of the public service, but there are also a number that are just college buses. So
That is
no help
correct,
at all,
Roy.
are there? Yeah.
The 611 and the 612 are closed contracted services, but the 625, the 623 and the 14 are all open to the public, as well as the 15, and they should all be in the public timetable. If they're not, that is something that needs to go back and be fed back to county.
Okay, well, we've got that on record then, and we'll certainly feed that back to county at the next bus advisory board meeting. I think that's a really interesting. So, I mean, for God's sake, how are people supposed to distinguish between the ones that are available? But we'll certainly take that up, Peter, won't we, at the bus advisory board? And I think Richard Morgan, Richard, you had your hand up to speak. Is he going to? Yes, unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say something maybe a bit not that important at the moment, but I was just wondering about all these comments that we're picking up from different Facebook pages and stuff. Is there any value in having a sort of central register for that, or are we using these meetings to collate comments?
We are collating the comments. That's the point. That's why we want the comments, so we can collate them from the chat box, from comments that we've already had, so that we can present them as the response to the cuts. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's why I put my hand up. Cheers.
Okay. I mean, again, but I think the other point that we've made and we'll discuss in a minute is the setting up of local bus user groups. I mean, we can't cover such a vast area, but setting up local bus user groups, and I would really prompt anybody here to think about it in your locality, that if you can set up a local group where people can readily feed to the county council the needs, the impacts, the successes, the failures. I mean, I think that's really, really important. I know FavBug have been doing that for many years. Hopefully Bridgewater Bus User Group is going to start doing that. But if we had, if we covered, and obviously thinking about how best to do that. But I think you are the best people to decide, whether that's an appropriate action for your area. And I think the thing about the Somerset Bus Partnership is we're not an official body. We're not here to sort of lay down rules as to how people should do this, that, and the other. It's just really a way of trying to galvanise interest and enthusiasm for buses, and to get people aware of, really how big the gap is in terms of consultation, and in terms of, sharing ideas and getting our views across to the Transport Authority. And that's, we're not trying to lay down rules. So any ideas you've got for your locality, you should follow through. Jason, Leslie, let Leslie come back, and then Jason, perhaps you'd like to say a little bit.
Yeah.
Leslie?
Yeah,
You've
just
frozen,
quickly,
Leslie.
originally I joined the group because I was representing Barrow Parish Council, and I helped to run community cafes in Barrow and Breen. And the major need that was coming through was we have no transport operating down there. It is tending to build up now again, because of course when the tourists start to come, we get the buses, but not when the tourists aren't there. So the summer season we get more buses and it works better, but during the winter there's nothing. So we're looking at setting up our own car share type of thing and trying to set up transport for Barrow and Breen. But I've recently become the mayor and chair of town council of Burnham and Highbridge. So I'm now looking at what happened within the election process when I was canvassing. And a lot of people there were saying, we need our little bus that comes Barrow, Breen, up to the shops, to the medical centre, to the little hospital and round again. What happened to it? Well, apparently it went bust or something. But, you know, I'm only a recent resident here. So what I think I'm looking at is saying that there are a lot of people out there who are lonely and isolated because they have no access to local transport. And what we need to do is to start looking at, I know it's important to get to the bigger places, but also to help people get out of their house and into the local shops and the medical centres. And that's what I would say is what I've come across as the greatest need in at the moment for us.
There was the 113, but that was a council funded service that operated the exact route you're talking about. But Somerset County Council withdrew the funding for that, from my recollection, back in 2016. And when the funding went, the service went with it.
Thank you.
And of course, that is an absolute.
Love to see that back. Thank you, Jason.
That's fine, no problem.
Fundamental principle of the bus service improvement plan, and it's also in our bus manifesto that, you know, you don't just look at the main routes. You've got to look at connecting rural services, and you've got to link it with the problem of social isolation. And our job, I think, and the job of the Transport Authority, even though they haven't got the money to do it now, and you know, I'm not letting them off the hook, but they've got to find the money. They've got to implement all of those things, and they're just as important. So, I mean, I think, you know, we're on a long journey. Thanks, Roy. Thanks a lot. See you soon. David Redgewell, I think, wants to speak. David?
Yeah, I want to come in on that 20 actually, because that's first again, this first was from England. The Western Hospital, where I'm a guest at the moment, I don't want to be, but I'm here, is actually part of the Bristol Royal Infirmary these days. And the thing is, when they're doing a review of the bus services that serve it for the benefit of Burnham-on-Sea and the local councils. So the trust is looking at a green travel plan, both for the Bristol site, the clean air zone, and the Western site. So I think it's worth you talking to the trust. And remember, what Somerset got £11.9 million, as Peter Travis will probably remind you, the West of England Mineral Combined Authority and North Somerset, which is effectively now one as far as buses are concerned, because North Somerset's offices are all about to move into WECA, is got £105.5 million. And obviously the 20 starts from Westmead. So I think it might be worth the Burnham-on-Sea Town Council talking to North Somerset Council and the West of England about the plans and for the hospital. I think there's a good point there. And just to clarify something, there is an hourly service, and Jason can correct this because obviously it connects with the 21, which goes to Highbridge, Burnham-on-Sea and Taunton. I do know this through fares, and I've got no problem, Jason, with that service because it's all pretty well connected actually as a through corridor.
Yeah, there is an hourly winter service.
Yeah.
It's not great, admittedly. It does finish early, it does start late, but there is scope to expand on that if North Somerset are willing to fund it.
And the other point, Glyn, is an option for Glyn to look at, and yourself, Jason, is possibly would that benefit from some link through that corridor then into Bridgewater Hospital somewhere or other, because obviously I'm told that surgical medical stuff is done at Bridgewater and then they bring them up to Western. So there's a link between these hospitals. So it's all part of the things you might want to look at is part of how you connect all these hospitals up from Taunton to Weston. Bearing in mind, of course, final point, Glyn, there is no A&E here at night, so everybody goes to Musgrove Park or Bristol.
Okay, thanks, David. Jason was going to come in, and then Elizabeth.
I forget what it was about now.
I'll come back to you then. You look so young
I think
to have
I've
that
covered
kind of
everything,
problem.
unless we want to do my little bit now and get that out the way, or come back to it later.
Let me talk to Elizabeth. Let's hear what Elizabeth wants to say, and then we'll come back to you, Jason.
Okay.
I just feel that I want to, this is what is really on my heart. It's really sad when I see these big double-decker buses coming through and nobody really getting on them. But this little link number 48 bus that goes backwards and forwards, why are we having these great big buses when they're not being used? Why aren't we having smaller buses that use up less fuel and could possibly eventually become electric, just linking up villages so that we can, if we've got a longer journey to make, we can still do it by just linking up. And yeah, using these small buses, which wouldn't matter if you only had half a dozen people on it. But the big double deckers with half a dozen, if you're lucky, people on it, it's just ridiculous. I wanted to say that.
Jane Anderson.
I think, Elizabeth, we didn't used to have the double deckers, but that became part of the COVID thing to keep people safe. So I'm presuming at some time we will go back to single decker ones, but it's a disaster for Axbridge, a huge double decker like that.
Yes.
Because it really struggles to get everywhere. But I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to leave in a minute. I'm actually called in at a relative's house to do this Zoom meeting. I was on my way back from Glastonbury Festival, where I've been stuck in traffic all day. But I just wanted to say thank you to Peter and thank you for Glenn for all the stuff you've done, which is just brilliant. And it's really given us a focus, I feel, but also for getting us together as a locality here. Because I think it is difficult sometimes. I think, Cheddar, Axbridge, Cross, East Brent, Brentnall to some degree, we're on that northern border. And I think sometimes we look at all the stuff about the buses and everything, and it's focused on Taunton, it's focused on Bridgewater. And actually, that doesn't, we're not really, well, I suppose there is some commuting from there, but mainly we are Weston and Taunton and Bristol in terms of commuting. And so issues for us really here are not just about losing the one bus that we've got, and obviously we'd like to have more, but we are absolutely overrun with new housing now. Cheddar is getting hundreds more all the time. And we're overrun with cars and the roads are ever busier. And it's heartbreaking to think that, if we had buses that went to Bristol, perhaps people would get rid of that second car. And so I just want to push the case for about not just thinking about buses that go from one part of Somerset and another. And we do need to, visit our neighbouring villages and things, but also, and now especially because petrol is so expensive, surely if we can get something going between counties, and I just, Carla, are you East Brent or are you Brentnall?
Yeah, no, I'm East Brent.
I mean, if we can get a bus that went up and we could go to Cross, it would come to Axbridge, it could start at Cheddar, go up to the park and ride. It's just so annoying when I see all these vehicles, and you can't go anywhere around here on a Friday afternoon. In fact, after 12 o'clock on a Friday, the roads are just rammed. So,
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for appreciating what we're trying to do. And I would just stress at that point, this is, a totally novel idea. And it's for parish councils to talk to each other seems to me to be quite a novel idea. And why, I do not know. But I mean, we are at the beginning. We don't always have the clear way forward, but we are at least starting to try and get people talking to each other, sharing ideas, and that must impact on the Transport Authority. Welcome, Jevon, currently in Glasgow. Nice to see you. Goodbye, Jane. Thank you. And don't forget, Jane, you can listen to the rest of the meeting. It is being recorded, so we'll make it available on.
Where do I find that? Because I tried to find the last one. Where, when you say you make it available,
On
where-
the, well, we have a Facebook page,
okay, I don't.
and I can presumably circulate the link as well, Peter, can't I?
Absolutely. It's
To everyone on this
YouTube.
meeting. So we'll do that. We'll make sure that you have the link.
Not everybody does Facebook. Some of us object to it. Okay.
Jane, have we got your email address?
Yes, you have. Yeah.
Okay, that's lovely.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks then. Bye. So, Jason, over to you. Do you want to say a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, and I don't know if other areas of Sedgemoor want to look at doing something similar to what we're looking at here in Bridgewater. So, First Bus have decimated the town service here in Bridgewater. It runs now, for a large town, it now runs between 9 and 4, Monday to Saturday. It doesn't take people to school, doesn't take people to work. It really isn't worth the fuel it uses. And as a disgruntled, soon to be ex-employee, no doubt, a colleague of mine and I came up with an idea very much similar, based to the Big Lemon down on the south coast in Brighton. They are a community interest company, not for profit. Any profit they do make goes back into making the service better for the community it serves. So the idea was born of Bridgewater Busways Community Transport CIC, which we've now registered with the Companies House. So we are all official. We've been in talks with both Sedgemoor District Council, and we have a meeting with Somerset County Council later this week with a view to what they can do to help support us. Because let's face it, these big transport groups are only interested in profit. And I think maybe it's about time we stood up to those large corporate companies and said enough's enough. We're going to put our own minibus, we're going to do our own thing. And it kind of, it's disheartening to see across the county and areas of Sedgemoor, which have been areas of Sedgemoor for so long, that are just not connected at all. So we've come up with an idea of literally running it ourselves. We've looked at the costs. It isn't cheap if you want to do it properly, and pay the staff a decent wage, because at the end of the day, if you don't pay them, they're not going to stay with you. Now we've even been in touch with bus lease companies who would lease us relatively new Euro 6 engines, so the cleanest engines available at the moment. So I'm willing to share the ideas with other members of the group with a view to, if you're looking at getting something in your area, maybe this is the way forward for a lot of us.
Okay, thanks, Jason. And that sounds like a very challenging and exciting idea.
But if anybody's got any questions, I'm willing to answer those, or they can come back to us via email. We are in our very early stages, but we do have a meeting with the county council this week. In fact, it was them that contacted us when they saw us sharing our Facebook page and our GoFundMe link, because the criteria for one of the grants we've gone for is we have to fund 10% of it ourselves, either through funding or fundraising. And
you'll keep us informed of the outcome of your meetings. I think that would be really helpful. Yeah. Keep the SPP.
It's been really useful to be part of tonight, Glenn. So thank you, and Peter, for having us along.
Most welcome. Are there any questions or comments about the project? Wait and see.
Well, just
Elizabeth.
I'm just wondering. I couldn't quite catch what sort of area it would be.
So we're currently we're Bridgewater based, right? Now we are looking at other areas outside of Bridgewater that we may be able to incorporate with any service that we're looking to start. Now, we only have a small amount of funding ourselves, so we can't cover everywhere. but we're kind of thinking if we can release the idea and get other groups talking about what they could do within their locality, then it helps everyone.
Richard? Sorry, Jason.
That's fine. Carry on.
Richard?
Hi there. You say 10%, Jason. How much is that?
So our initial costs for the first year projected are £600,000, including the leasing of the vehicles, wages, insurances, ticket machines, the lot. So we would be looking at £60,000 to match any grant that Sedgemoor would be willing to give us.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? So we'll ask Jason to keep us informed and perhaps also to come to a meeting of the Bridgewater Bus Users Group.
Yeah, very happy to.
You know, we'd really like to be working closely with you, I think, on that. No more, I can't see anyone else indicating. So we'll go on. Peter, before we come to your, you're going to update us on sort of Catch the Bus Week and the campaign. I haven't mentioned, I don't think, are people aware of, just going back to the award, the small amount of money that the government allocated. I don't know how aware people are of how the county council are planning to spend that money. Obviously, it's lower than they were expecting, much sorry, a tiny percentage. I'm not good at percentages, Peter. What percentage of the original?
About 7%.
So you see, Somerset County Council have a bus service improvement plan which says this has got to happen. This is really important. This is what we're going to do to make Somerset have decent bus services, and it's going to cost us 162.5 million. Well, they haven't got that. They've got a tiny proportion of that. So they've obviously had to make a decision, a difficult decision about how to spend that money. And not everybody will be very happy because, well, particularly if you don't live in Taunton. But I mean, we had to discuss this with the county council. And I must say, to some extent, I saw their point. What they were saying was, if we try and spread it across Somerset and do a little bit here, a little bit there, we won't actually have very much to show for it. So what they've actually submitted to the government as their proposals for this tranche of spending is really, I mean, the money is divided into capital spend and revenue spend, and it's basically going to be mostly spent making Taunton into a bus town. Now, I know there are going to be people who say, oh, yeah, Taunton gets the lot again. And you know, that's obviously understandable. But I guess we have come to understand that the argument that if you do one thing really well, then you're going to attract more funding so you can carry on doing other things really well. So what their proposal is that as far as capital goes, bus priority lanes in and out of Taunton are going to be a priority. So there's going to be up to 4,000 metres of bus priority lanes in and around Taunton, compared to Bridgewater, which will have about 500 metres of bus priority lanes. So they're not forgotten. They've not forgotten about it. Now, don't laugh, Jason. So if people haven't seen that, put in chat, and again, willing to circulate the details. So I just would say that the majority of the expenditure at the moment is going to be, and the revenue spend again is going to be focused on Taunton, reduced town bus fares, reduced park and ride bus fares, and service expansion funding. So yes, you know, there's all sorts of criticisms you can make of that, but I think we do have to, our point from the Somerset Bus Partnership, what we keep stressing is this is just a start and you mustn't stop here. You must look for other sources of funding, and that includes funding from county council revenue as well, and which, you know, Somerset County Council have not been very good at spending money on transport. So, I mean, you know, we're not sort of lying down and saying, oh yeah, Taunton's more important than anywhere else, but we do want to see the money spent in a successful project. Peter, did you want to comment on any of that?
No, I think you summed it up very well. I'm in Mendip. Mendip isn't actually going to get any money at all.
No.
But I go along with what you said. It's for the greater good that it should be focused in Taunton. The government put all sorts of stipulations in about that it was majority was fixed investment and should be directed towards bus priority lanes. The government said that when they said they were prepared to give Somerset some money, but it was only on condition that those guidelines were followed. And so that's the plan which was put forward. It was developed under the Conservative administration and has been endorsed, as I understand it, by the Lib Dem administration is now going forward.
Carla, were you wanting to speak?
Yes, I just wondered how we know that the money from the government that will go to Somerset Council will actually be spent on buses and the infrastructure. How can we audit it? Because is there an opportunity for the money not to be spent on the bus services or priority lanes and go off somewhere else?
In this particular case, it's ring fenced, and the Department for Transport is monitoring it quite carefully and have stipulated how and where it should go, or certainly where it should go in terms of what types of projects it should go on. So I personally feel very confident the money will go on improving bus services in Somerset, focused primarily on Taunton.
Okay.
Can I also stress that we have the ongoing liaison with the Bus Advisory Board, which comes Somerset County Council, and the transport representatives and the bus stakeholders group. So we have an opportunity to ask questions to keep them to what they've said they're going to do. I'm not naive enough to think that nothing could go wrong, but we do have at least that structure. David, is that a legacy hand, or are you waiting to speak?
No, I wanted to say two things. First of all, obviously, they got to audit it. So the Department for Transport, they have to send all the returns up, and the first set of returns they have to send up is on the 1st of July for all the money they're spending now, the £150 million of bus service recovery fund. So they'll be working on that, and they'll be working, of course, Peter's a bit untruth to say he won't get any money, because Peter will get money from the Mayor of the West of England. So he lives in this world where Dan Norris funds him a few buses and Sedgemoor gets a few, as we've just talked about, from North Somerset. So it's unfair to say the north of the county won't benefit, but it won't benefit from the Somerset pot.
Thanks, David.
Directly. But what I really want to say was, back to Jason's bit a little bit, is, Jason, you might want to talk to them. Stagecoach South West have been given some money with Highways England to upgrade the Falcon service, and that includes the infrastructure. So that's all the stops and waiting areas, Glyn, in Sedgemoor. And I believe, I'm only getting this now, correct me, Jevon, because I'm not an expert where the Falcon stops, but I believe, Jason, it calls it East Brent. I believe it calls it Churchill. I believe it's got other stops, Bridgewater. I know it stops at Taunton. I know it certainly stops in Wellington and Clumpton, then it goes on to Exeter, Newton Abbot and Plymouth, Bristol Airport and Bristol. So if there was a connecting bus from Cheddar, say, to Churchill,
I don't think Newton Abbot does, Dave.
Sorry?
The point was,
it doesn't do Newton Abbot.
Oh, right. Okay. So what I was going to say is you might have an opportunity to talk to them about some shuttle feeder with your community bus in the evenings or in the day to wherever they pick up.
See, one of the ideas we had, David, was to run a bus up the A38 from Bridgewater, connecting the villages along the A38, and then turning around either near or at the airport to run back towards Bridgewater and Highbridge, connecting in the train station at Highbridge.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah. So that was the point. So it's worth, and Highways England, Glyn, has got this pot of money. So we need, or national roads. So we need to talk to them because it is a substantial amount of money for the A38 M5 corridor. So
okay, thanks, David.
The lead on the name for that is Simon Ford and Nick Small at Stagecoach. So that, and the only other point I wanted to make, there's been, I'm sure you're delighted, Glyn, I'm not. There's been millions of pounds spent to Highbridge and Burnham on Sea Station on a new footbridge. I don't think I will say. it's not accessible to anybody going to the holiday camps.
Sorry,
or
David, can we leave that as a
just-
separate issue? That's a
okay.
railway station footbridge. We're talking about buses, but thanks anyway.
I was just
Thank
going to
you.
say about the bus connection there. That was all. It's just if you get off the train, you've got to lug your luggage before you can get to the bus. That was my
Sure.
point about it.
And that
was
is
my
been,
plea.
thank you, David. That is an issue that, in fact, I was talking about today with the rail workers. So we are kind of trying to get onto that, but thank you. Okay, so I'm going to then move on. As I say, that's where we are with plans to spend that small amount of money. Going to now move on to, one of the things that we've got to keep stressing, and we've found out all the time since we've been organising on this issue, is yes, okay, the bus companies are there to make profits, but if we don't use the buses, then that's the prime case we've got to make. And it is true that we have to do far more to encourage people to use buses, because we lose them often because the companies say, well, we can't afford to run a bus for one person. So to some extent, the solution does lie in our hands. And so what we have said now is that our next sort of phase has really got to be, and we also want to make sure that we don't think bus companies do very, very much to promote their services either. That you don't see many adverts, you don't see many get on the bus promotion. And we want to work with bus companies to do that. So Peter, I'm going to ask you now just to fill us in about the plans for bus campaigning, Catch the Bus campaigning. The time.
Getting more people on board Somerset's buses. That's in both our interests, it's in Somerset County Council's interests, and it's very much in the bus operators' interests. So we see our local representatives as being bus champions in their various localities. And so one of the things we would invite them to do is to organise local bus stalls, and we'll talk some more in that when we talk about the Catch the Bus month, which is in September of this year. It would be good to get your local councils also to endorse our bus manifesto. We've got plenty of copies of that if anybody needs it. But one of the most important things is to ensure that bus timetables are displayed at bus stops. So we'd ask you to go and look at your local bus stops and to let us know if the bus timetables aren't there, or even worse, that they're out of date, because that's the most seriously misleading piece of information possible. In some of our villages, particularly in this part of Mendip, we started to produce specific timetables for individual villages and then door drop them to every house in the village, and that's being paid for by the local parish council. And it's not an expensive operation for our village, which has got 1,500 people. It costs us about £150, £160 each time we do it. It became too expensive with so many bus timetable changes that we saw during COVID, but things have started to calm down a lot more. And then the other free of charge media is social media. Now, not everybody likes Facebook, but it is a very powerful and effective way of getting your message out there. So use social media to pass on information about buses, bus times, post the bus times on your social media platforms, any bus changes, announce them on those platforms. Now, the bus operators should be doing this, but they're focusing on running the buses rather than marketing the buses. So we really have to start to help them do the job that they should be doing. One of the ways that it's planned to help them is, as I say, in September, there is going to be the bus month, Get on Board. And here in Somerset, we're going to be running a campaign specifically about Somerset Catch the Bus campaign. We've got a Facebook page called Somerset Catch Bus campaign. I know a lot of you are on that. It's a very good Facebook page because it's got operators, it's got bus campaigners, bus users on it. It's a good one to get on, easily found. Somerset Catch a Bus campaign or Somerset Catch a Bus Facebook page. And we encourage local stalls in villages and towns. This is one we ran in Frome, and we're going to be using those bright green hands, Catch a Bus Week hands, and they are very dramatic, very easy to see. We've got a very small supply, so anybody who wants to run a Catch the Bus stall, giving out information on your local buses, encouraging people to go by bus, will get you some hands to be used at that stall. So the most important thing, I've said it before, is making sure that people know the times of buses. It's shocking just how many bus stops around this county have either got no timetables or, as I say, even worse, out of date timetables. Online timetables, even by some of the biggest operators, are just left online, even that when they're out of date. And it's extremely confusing for people hitting an online bus timetable thinking it will be accurate, only to find that it isn't. And sadly, First West of England in the north, not buses of Somerset, but in the north of the county, First West of England have stopped printing timetables, which we think the loss of route timetables is a very retrogressive step. This is the bus timetable we do in my village. We have 2 bus services, and we've just integrated all the bus times so that if you want to go to Frome, doesn't matter who the operator is, we show the bus time and you can see the operator from the key in there. If you want to go to Bath or if you want to go to Trowbridge, all that information is there. And we go and drop it into every house in the village. Our local parish councillors door drop it into every house in the village. And buses have become a really big issue for our village. And we have a lot of people who go out of their way to travel by bus and leave the car at home. Final plea from me, if you have got any spare time and you'd like to help and organise and run the Somerset Bus Partnership, I suppose the first thing you should do is make contact with Glenn and join the Bridgewater group, the bus user group in Bridgewater. But if you'd like to contact Somerset Bus Partnership itself, there's our email address, somersetbuspartnership@gmail.com. We've also got a Facebook page and a website as well. Glenn, thank you.
Sorry, all that was muted. Any questions or comments? Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Dear. Elizabeth.
I just wonder where you got the beautiful timetables from. Did you have to make it up yourself, or what? You made it up yourself?
Yeah, we took
really
the information. Have to be. This isn't an attack on First Bus, but First Bus is the one which has quite a lot of out-of-date timetables. So we made sure we had the latest First Bus timetable, and also Fairsaver, who are, in fairness to them, very efficient in maintaining up-to-date timetables. We took both timetables and we sat down, and it's actually quite a complicated process. It must have taken us an hour or two because we had to make sure they're absolutely right. And we put it together so that anybody from our village can see the time of the buses to where they want to go, but also equally important, they can see at what time they're coming back to our village as well.
It's really good.
Did you, sorry, Peter, did you mention the Somerset Catch the Bus Week? Is you gave the dates, did you?
I didn't. It's we're focusing on the 3rd to the 11th, though there have been some suggestions that perhaps we have to expand that, but certainly from the 3rd to the 11th of September, will be the primary focus for the Somerset Catsey Bus Week, and we'll be contacting everybody about that, encouraging you to work with the bus user groups such as in Broachwater to help them set up bus stalls and bus activities, but also thinking what you can do in the parishes as well to make that an issue. And it will be a good focus for posts on Facebook to link it into the Catch the Bus Week.
I mean, I've just seen something in the chat. You know, I had this idea that I might invite Ian Littlegranger to come and ride on a bus with me. We could have a wonderful time together. I mean, you know, that I'd.
If you can find a bus for him to ride, Glenn.
Oh, well, there is that, of course. But I mean, we ought to try and get some fun out of this, because it is, you know, it's not all about us complaining to our transport authority. It is also about us saying, you know, there's a climate emergency. We need to get people out of their cars. We need to get people to use the buses. And no, we've got to have some way of saying to the bus operating companies, we'll help you if you help us. You know, I don't like the fact that they're deregulated, because I think that ought to be another long-term aim, that we actually ask for bus services to be brought back into being regulated by the Transport Authority. But they are, and they have to make profits. So, you know, we've got to, it goes against the grain for me. We've got to help them to make profits. And so I think that week will be quite a good focus, and we'll have lots of ideas which we'll be sharing, but we don't want to take over local ideas. If you can have your ideas, if you can talk in, you know, in your town, your parish about what you can do, we'll help in any way we can. Are there any other?
I really love those big green hands. I think one of those on the bus stop with a little catchphrase would be super, really eye-catching.
Yes, yes.
But I don't know whether, yeah, a couple of those in our village, I think would be very eye-catching.
Put your order in early, Elizabeth, to the Somerset Bus Partnership.
Okay.
Carla, you wanted to speak.
Yes, I mean, it's been really useful, very helpful evening. Thank you for all the information from everybody. The dilemma is, the majority of villages where we live, to be blunt, a lot of people are of state age pension age, so they have a bus pass, so they don't actually pay a fare. I actually went on the bus service, the number 48, that's a trial bus for 18 months, so I paid a fare. But how do we solve that discrepancy between number of people who use the buses who don't actually pay for the service, and those who are younger but are not able to use the service because there's no option, or it's not running at the times that they would use? I can't quite see how we can, you know, complete the circle on that one, really.
On regards to bus passes, legally bus companies can't ask for fares in lieu of the bus pass. So if someone presents the bus pass, the bus company has to accept it. If, like yourself and others, don't use passes and just pay, that's perfectly fine. But they are governed by law that they can't take the pass and then charge, say, £1, which is frustrating.
Yeah, it just seems, I mean, it's don't get me wrong, I mean, it's obviously great for people, you know, with rising cost of emergency, cost of living and stuff like that, you know, to have a bus pass would be great, and obviously for children traveling to school who need a bus pass, but there is obviously this big gap, isn't there? And I don't really know, unless something is decided from government level, unless I'm wrong and each individual area works under a different way, because obviously some areas, like as we showed on Peter's chart, you know, Somerset fund it £5.7 per person, I think, and other areas like Cornwall, and how come they do it so much better than Somerset? Is it something that Somerset has neglected for so long that we've now dug ourselves into a deep pit and we can't get out of?
I think it's been declining since 2010, 2011, when they started making swathing cuts to the bus subsidies that were available. I've been with First for 8 years, and the amount of routes that have gone through lack of council funding is astronomical. But I think the large corporate companies are partly to blame for that as well.
Yes. David Redshaw, you want to come in there?
Thank you.
Yeah, I've only just seen this. On Friday at 12 o'clock is the Mayor of the West of England, Dan Norris, in North Somerset are having a meeting on the bus service improvement plan, which is very interesting because that includes, this is the West of England one, that includes the corridor 126 from Weston-super-Mare to Wells through Cheddar and Zaxbridge and Winscombe, Banwell and Locking. And also the 20, which is obviously the Burnham-on-Sea to Western corridor. They're in the Baines, North Somerset bus service improvement plan. So providing any council wants to make representation, he's very open as Dan to cross-border representation, understanding. Peter's met him a few times, understanding the whole, he likes to understand the sub-region, and he's certainly not been frightened to put money into bus services across the borders, certainly rescued bus services across the border into Somerset, Wiltshire and Gloucestershire just recently. So if there is representation, it has to be made by 12 o'clock on the Thursday before the Democratic Services, the West of England Mural Combined Authority. So it's worth any of the parishes doing that. And the other point and that includes obviously the Falcon Corridor. And the other point I really wanted to make was obviously we're going to ask him to join the Catch the Bus campaign week or month, use his clout, obviously as a prominent person. The only thing I was going to say on Cornwall, they got a devolution deal on buses and trains from central government. So not only can they subsidise very heavily their buses, they can also provide very, very cheap trains as well in their county. So it depends on the deals you've done with central government, and Devon, of course, have precepted their rates very high to maintain coach services, bus services, ferry services, and local trains. So it's down to your local political administration, really, whereas Wiltshire's pretty good. But Dorset and Somerset, as Jason will tell you, cut everything. Gloucestershire maintained everything. So it is down to the local authority, and the other bodies involved are the regional transport boards. There's one that covers Somerset, Devon and Cornwall, seems to be working quite hard on buses. There's another one called Western Gateway that covers the north of the county that didn't win much money in the bus service improvement plans. So it's patchy, and it shouldn't be like that. I'm in the same category as Glyn, actually. I believe public transport is a public service, and whether you're funding first as a contractor or stagecoach, the state needs to understand and specify, or you run it directly by the state, or you run it through a social enterprise. But it's a public service, just like a school, a college, a post office, and that's what public transport should be. And this idea, the only reason you run it is to make profit for big private corporations, whether they're the German State Railway or First or Stagecoach, is with taxpayers' money is not my way of running public transport, right?
Okay, thanks, David.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we have some hopes. Obviously, we have a new administration now. We have some hopes that, but you know, politicians have been known not to keep to their promises. Am I cynical? But you know, that is our aim: is that we keep the pressure on the Transport Authority to carry out the promises made by the previous administration, which they have a vested interest now in proving that they're better than the previous administration. Peter, sorry, you wanted to come in.
Just to come back to Carla's point, yes, Somerset, as Jason said, started to make cuts in 2010. Also, the previous administration was very keen to keep the precept down, and so there hasn't been a lot of money. Social care is the one which takes up the largest amount of money. But I think we can be more optimistic about the future. The Lib Dem manifesto is very clear about its aim for buses. In the bus service improvement plan, which is still the ambition, albeit we haven't got very much money towards achieving it, one of the most important initiatives was that they were looking at a youth fare, a discounted fare up to about the age of 25. But when we look at seniors who do get generally well protected by both central and local government, seniors are not returning to the buses. And one of the biggest issues we've got is to reassure them that it is now safe enough for them to return to the buses, because though it's a heavily discounted rate, the income that the bus companies get from that volume of customers, much of it in off-peak, is very useful income. And at the moment, the bus operators are largely protected on that income, but at some stage that support will disappear. So we do need to get more seniors back on the buses.
Yes, thanks. Point is being made in the chat box as well that we've got a bus manifesto. We've got this new linking of parish and town councils across Somerset. It's really important that we get all the town and parish councils in Somerset to commit to the bus manifesto, and in their turn to make sure that they put pressure on the Transport Authority, the county council, to also commit to the bus manifesto and to the bus service improvement plan. So, I mean, you know, we are an informal gathering tonight. I mean, we're giving you ideas, we're getting your ideas. That's what it's meant to be. I want to we want to think about bringing the meeting to a conclusion. But what I'd really just like to sort of get an indication of is, are people happy with that kind of informal arrangement? We're not laying down a route for you. We're just saying, if you're interested in buses and you want to make a difference, here's some ideas, here's some people you can talk to, here's some things you can link up with, and here's some things, but you know, we ain't doing it for you and we're not telling you how to do it. Is that a setup that people are generally happy with, or does anyone want to make any changes or comments that might make us more
No. I think it's been a very good informative evening, Glenn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you for your input as well. Anybody else? No? Okay, then in that case, I will, gosh, with only 4 minutes over, I'll bring the meeting to an end, and thank you all very much indeed for your contributions and for your attendance. We'll obviously be organising another one, and as Peter has said, you are also, I think I'm right in saying this, Peter, if people want to join the Somerset Bus Partnership team, then please let us know. And if there are any documents, any of the things we've referred to, make sure you let us know if you need copies of the bus manifesto. You know, we can catch the bus and bring them and dump them on your doorstep. So, you know, it's all available. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening, relax, and, you know, put your feet up, and see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Where am I?